Okay, awesome. Thank you for joining me, Yvonne. Um, thank you for joining. Usually, I start by saying something interesting about the speaker that I'm interviewing, and I think Yvonne is amazing. When Yvonne pinged me and said that he's starting something new, I wanted to have the background of "Shut up and take my money" for our first, and because everything that he does with developer experience is something that is amazing, and he has this amazing way of talking to developers and understanding developer needs. And we met in the Shift conference that you organized, and I was very lucky to be in. So let's talk about developer experiences and developer tools. But let's start by having you introduce yourself.
Sure. I mean, thanks for having me. It's always nice when some people say nice things about you. You never know when you do it yourself if they're nice or not. Uh, Background has always been building, I think it's always been infrastructure and or developers, which sort of co-align. So everything that we have done, I say we because the co-founding team in Daytona and much of the team in Daytona has been either co-founders or teams in previous companies that we have built. For the first company we did, we actually I don't know if you know this story because it wasn't relevant to our old product, is that we actually had a services company that racked, server rooms. Like we actually, this was the early 2000s, like they screwed like the racks, get the Dell servers out of the boxes and the IBM servers, install hypervisor, VMware, and all these things. So we did that for a while. That got acquired. Then we did Code Anywhere, which was the very first browser-based IDE, which started in 2009, which was like super, super, super early. So Replit, I think yesterday announced that they're worth 3 billion. They started that officially when we had stopped, and they also had a very, very difficult time until they got where they are. So definitely not an easy space, and you learn that timing is quite important to what you're doing. But what we did learn there is because it was so early, you had to build out everything yourself. So there was no VS Code. You had to build your own editor. There was no Kubernetes. So you had to build your own orchestrator. Like we had to build all these things ourselves. And we understood that from like an infrastructure perspective because we had stacked these things before. But my co-founder Vedran was also a much better programmer than I was. I was more on the systems parts and the networking and server. So that co-aligned quite well together. After that, we did Code Anywhere. After that, we did Shift, which you were a part of, which was a bootstrapped conference that now does, I don't know, 4 or 5 thousand people. It's actually tomorrow or day after tomorrow. Again, it still exists.
Amazing.
So we built that from the ground up, and everyone that we all know, either they have or someone from their company had spoken or sponsored that conference. So it's somewhere where we have learned to build that entire community and sort of quote unquote sell to both enterprises or B2B sponsors and to individual people. That got acquired by Infobip. Infobip is a large competitor of Twilio, so they do a few billion. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say exactly how much in run rate. They're a private company, but very much an infrastructure company that sells to developer. I was chief developer experience officer there. Interesting title. And then started Daytona, which is now a runtime for AI agents, basically giving AI agents a computer. So again, the entire time has been either around developers and or infrastructure.
So one of the things that I want to start with is the question that I get a lot from founders is like, how do I start with? I have a startup and I want to start doing advocacy. Should I start by hiring a person or should the founder be the first advocate? And I always point them to you because I think you're doing an amazing job in LinkedIn and other platforms of advocating for the product, both listening to customers and telling them what's happening. And you do it in a very consistent way. So, do you have like a formula? Do you have a magic pattern that you follow?
I'm gonna steal from other people when I say this, and so there's a lot of people that do a lot of things, and some things I understood intuitively, but I did not very much articulate it. So one of the things that you have to do is be constantly on top of people's minds. And so Zeno from Recent actually wrote about this in the sense of like waves where you're constantly in front of people. And so sometimes they're higher and sometimes they're lower. They're not all, you can't always be, you can't always raise a Series A. You can't always launch a new product. You can't always do these things, but you can have things of higher and lower magnitude that are messaged to your community, and you have to keep in people's minds. And there'll be, not to get into that sector in the world, but like if you think of anyone selling anything, including politicians and everything like that, the currency is attention, right? And so obviously we're not celebrities and you're not trying to be, you're doing something else, but you do have to keep top of mind. And I know this sounds very, very abstract, but if people can take a look at Zeno's article, maybe you can link to that later on. It's like quite interesting. It's not saying what to signal or how to signal. It's just that there is a signal. And I know when we do different things, I'll be very specific in the sense of like launches or announcements on Twitter. You'll know this as well, is that we do ping our, investors and friends to retweet or reshare or whatever some of these things. But we don't do it for everyone, right? Because also you guys would tell us to go to hell because like every week you're doing something. So you have to sort of like pace what is super important and then you sort of like drive a lot. And then after that, you do the less ones and you don't bug people, but it's still that people that are interested will get a chance to see that. And that is for like the digital world of how to keep on people's minds. But I think part of the what you mentioned was should the founder do it or not? I think the only way for it to be actually authentic is if that the founder is doing that. Like if you have a hire and we all have them, highly respect them. I think that's a different tone and they speak under the tone of voice that is set by the company. And I think the only person or the only people that can set it are the founders. And when the founder says it, it does, it one is more authentic and two carries much more weight. And I see this with my interactions. Like if I send a cold email or approach someone or whatever, being the founder, you get much more throughput. Like it's just like they'll just give you the time of day versus someone else. So I think that is important. And I'll leave that on a caveat, and then I'll switch it back to you, which is the way you do it. I think you have to play it to your strengths. Swix, so Shang Wang, which is one of like definitely the best DevRel people out there, and congratulations on his new job now at Cognition.
Yeah.
He does it really well, and overall does it really well. But what he does well that I suck at is he does writing really well. So he writes like when he writes, he has his whole DX tips, I think it's called, and he writes really, really well. And he does that, or had done that at least consistently. Now he has the podcast, now he has other things, but he did that really well. I'm very bad at writing, and so I don't focus on that because I can't do that really well. What I am good at really well is organizing people in a real life setting. And so hence organizing conferences, I do meetups, I do drink ups, I'll go to other people's, I organize dinners or whatever. It is a natural form for me, and that is how I interact with these people versus someone that does something else. So you don't have to essentially, I don't have a playbook in the sense of like, here, I'm here to do what I do because you might have different strengths than I do. And so you should play to your strengths in these things.
So a quick follow-up question because people also ask me that, like, how long does it take from the minute you post your first post until you start seeing like traffic to your site or people reacting? If you, how long is it? Like immediately that everybody loves your product, or it takes more time than that?
I think it also depends. So I can give you the a little more articulate answer for Daytona
Okay.
2.0 specifically. So just for background people that are listening, so Daytona started 2 years ago. It was automation of dev environments for human engineers in large enterprises. So very large enterprises were the buyers, humans were the users. And we decided to pivot and change the product from serving essentially VMs to humans to serving VMs to agents. So not a 180-degree pivot, but very much a go-to-market pivot and whatnot. And for us, what we understood, we decided this February 1st, and we said we're going to do this because it's such a concentrated market. So the market, our buyers are people building AI agents. The place where most people are building AI agents are in San Francisco. Like that is where they are. Like literally the vast majority is. Not everyone has that opportunity to know graphically exactly where your buyers are or users. And so we had that as a sort of instruction or directionally where we're going. And because of that, we said, okay, everyone from the company, we were about 12 people at the time, will be in San Francisco for as much amount of time as life allows them. Like no one was from San Francisco. So depending on, marital, children, school, life issues, but everyone would be there. And we decided to create a large presence in there. And so what we did, because we're really good at events, we would organize at least one event a day. Sorry, a day, that was too much. A week. And we would go to at least one other event every other day. And when there was more people, we'd go to other events because everyone is an SF, everyone's building agents or the vast majority of agents, and there's a bunch of these things. And so we just want to be omnipresent with the things that we're doing. And so doing that, we started building it out February 1st. We launched the product about 3 months after that, and it just kicked off. There are like digital things that we did across from that, but it did kick in, and we got to a run rate of 1 million in 2 months really fast. Now we're three and a
Amazing.
half months in. We're at 2 million, like run rate now, average for this month, which is like pretty fast for an infrastructure company. And we have very, very, very large companies, PLG coming in, knowing about us. So the amount of time it took us was let's call it 6 months from the point of we started to kick it off to the point that we're getting people coming in. And this is very much no direct sales, no no sales managers, no top down. It's very much PLG. It's like how long did it take us to push information about Daytona to the world for the world to sort of come back to us? And it took us 6 months, essentially. Maybe we
I
could
think
say
six
three
months
months
is
for
the
the
magic number. That's what I always say, tell developers. Like 6 months, you have to wait 6 months. If you think it's going to be the first week, that's probably not gonna,
no,
you're going to be
no, no,
disappointed.
no.
6 months
And
is great.
And I think that's what happens. It might even be 12 where it actually starts kicking in, where it goes upwards, because depending on what type of company you are. So, right, you have Lovable, we talked about a little bit earlier. Lovable is a consumer product, which is different than what we have and different from most developer products because consumer products, the consumer can come in and use it day one. There's not really a long like cycle. But for most developer tools, it is basically one this is I'm paraphrasing from the founder of Sentry, which says basically it's in three steps of marketing, general marketing. It's like one, do they even know you exist? Like, do they know that the company exists? Two, do they know what the company does? And then three, do they have a need for the company? And your job as a essentially marketer or community builder, whatever, is do they know for ours, like, do they even know that Daytona exists? That's the one thing. And then we work really hard that they know that we exist. After that, you try to educate them to what you do, and then you have to wait for them to actually have a need for your product, which can be 2 months down the road, 3 months, 6 months. It can even be a year. It could be longer. And so those are like the steps, and all those steps sort of take time. So yeah, it could be that it's like on average the 6 month period where you sort of start feeling that it's working or not.
An interesting point that you made is like you created your own events, but you also attended other people events. And this is a question that I get a lot around like, should I have my own community or should I go to other communities to advocate for my product? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's both. I think you have to do both. I think I've been very, and this is just my way I think about things. There's easier and harder ways to do things. And just to take a step back from myself, creating a startup, not hating on anyone, to be very clear up front, is I was born in Canada, but I lived half my life in Croatia. So did not go to an Ivy League school, don't have those connections. Did not go to any like management consulting, don't have any of those connections. Did not go to like Google or Facebook, don't have any of those connections. Like I didn't have any of those. And then when you come in to create a startup, it is quite difficult to get a, let's just call it like an S tier VC. The reason I say S tier VC is because that's someone that can basically be your, let's call it guardian angel for all sakes and purposes right now, which can sort of uplift you generally, like signal wise. Oh, this is the company to be, and that gives you very much a big push. So like, I would assume like um, Andreessen or Peter Thiel or whatever invest in you. You have a lot of signaling that comes from that, and so I was understood that I wouldn't get that, especially in the beginning. And our first round was purposely almost a community round. And so you guys were part of that. And a lot of people that I'd met earlier, I had invited. And so we have something on the order of magnitude of like 60 angels in our pre-seed round. And this was super deliberate because I wanted other people's community to be part of my community and for our community to be part of theirs. And so there's a maybe a long answer into what you're saying, but I did that super deliberately um, to have that. And so when we decided to do our events and create our community, I actually pulled from our angels. And always when we're creating events, I could call on my angels to sort of come in. Not obviously all of them would come in, but some would. And that created like interest around you. So the first event we ever did in San Francisco, we had, founder of like Netlify came there and some other founders, and then they were on the list of people coming, and then other people would come because they didn't know who the hell we were, but they knew who they were, right? And so we practice that as much as we can. And so, just an example, last week, an old colleague from Techstars, so we were in Techstars 10 years ago, and our classmates there, they have a new company that does MCP servers, right? MCP hosting. And we do, sandboxes for agents. And so they pinged me and said, "Hey, can we talk at your event?" Because we had an event in GitHub 2 days ago. And I'm like, yes. And they had an event after that. I'm like, can we talk at your event? And they said yes. And so like we talked at their event, they talked at our event. And I think the only way to do that is that you be part of other people's communities and they be part of yours. It's sort of like having cameo appearances on like when a new artist, in the sense of a singer, comes out, they probably start off being on someone else's late like record first to sort of get part of their community known about them, and then they pull that over to their side. I don't know if that's particularly way, but that's sort of how I think of those things.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think at Slack we started by hacking into other people's community because we didn't have a community, and
Yeah,
as time passed, we had more and more cat
your
fodder
own.
on our end, and then we created our own cat community. It's funny because one of the most successful integration at the beginning was a cat integration that sent you a happy cat photo.
Really?
Yeah, every day. I found that delightful and used it. Um, Last thing I want to say about communities and get your input on it is how do you know if it's effective? Because a lot of people think that if you pour effort into community, immediately everybody's going to start loving and moving into your product. When do you know that you actually need to do that versus going and selling directly to customers?
I think it depends on the product that you're building around. And so if your product, and we're talking about mostly developer focused
Yeah,
products, I
like for
believe.
example, your
Yeah.
product infrastructure, you could have gone
Yeah.
no community, zero things, just go and sell, like hire five salespeople and have
And go
them
sell.
like
Yeah,
go
we could
sell.
have done that. My intuition for this was because we are creating a net new primitive type of like the sandbox is a net new primitive. Like the way it's created, it's nothing that is inside of the hyperscalers exists. That is like this specifically. There's different parts and pieces. We had to create the whole thing. We need the whole orchestration virtualization layer. Everything is our own because agents need new things that humans do not. And our intuition was that the companies and people that actually need this were going to be the new companies in the sense of like we had the cloud sort of hype, and then you had the mobile hype, and now we have the agent or AI sort of wave. Sorry, wave is the word, not hype. And the companies that are of the AI agent space have not yet been created. So like ChatGPT is one, Granola is maybe one, Repler Lovable is maybe one. But like in general, I don't think we have like the large portion, the vast majority of these companies have been created. If these companies are not being created, then they're going to be created. If they're going to be created, then it's very much a bottom-up motion because you're not going to sell to like a
That makes
two-person
sense.
founding company. It's all PLG basically, and that's how you get to them. And so we do have large enterprise companies using us right now as well, but that is sort of like came from the PLG motion. And also, sorry, I forgot to mention one more thing, which is that was our intuition, the best place to go. But I also historically looking at companies, almost all the companies in a competing space, if one was consumer or at least bottom up first and one was top down, the bottom up slash consumer always ends up being the bigger one company. Like a GitHub versus a GitLab, a Twilio versus an Infobip, whatever. Like when you look at all the companies you can look at, even an iPhone versus a BlackBerry, the ones that went bottom up first are the ones that got the brand recognition that ended up falling over into the enterprise. And it's much easier to go from a bottom up to a top down organization to a bottom up. I don't know if anyone's done that at like very successful scale. So that was
Yeah,
my thought behind
usually
that.
you start with like indie developers, getting people aware and then proficient. And at the end, you go into the enterprise and you want them to actually know about your product because they
Already,
heard
yeah.
it in a meetup and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Last question that I have for you because we spend a lot of time on community and developer tools, and both of us love this topic. Is what is the future of like both developer platforms and developer communities? Are we going to have more developers, less developers? Is AI going to take everything away from developers, or is maybe opening it up to more people?
So, yeah, you mentioned it also earlier. I think there's going to be more. There probably will be more, but on the community side, like I'm not sure. Probably could be quite right that there will be. But what I do believe that will be in this AI world more important, and I've always been sort of biased towards this in general, so I might still be biased, is that having in real life connections, which can translate into communities, will probably be the most valuable thing that you can do because it's one of the few things that you'll be able to do at scale. And if the cost of doing things like scale goes to zero, my bet is that the value of that it goes to zero as well. In the sense of like, if you can do if you generate a ton of content for free, then the value of that content also goes down to basically zero, right? That's also my hot take on AI SDRs. Like they might work now until everyone has it, but then when everyone's doing an AI SDR, you will never get on the phone with an AI SDR ever again because it'll just be spammed. It'll just so much. You just have like a filter to block them all out. And then the actual human salesperson is the thing that actually will give you value and will actually cost more. And I think that part, if we're talking about community building, like digital it'll still be there, but I think it's going to go hyper back into real person. And if you could actually get this time of day from a person, if you're a founder and you will give the time to create the community, I believe you'll be able to get much more value because you're doing it versus other people and it's not scalable. So it costs you something. It costs you a lot of your time, which is the most precious thing you have. So that's my thought on the future of that. I think it'll be much
I
more
love
valuable going
that
forward.
because I think you tap into a really big truth is that we have a pendulum. We used to think that everything should be scale and automatic, and it's our generation. We're really into like go and scale it, do things that don't scale, but then scale. And some of the stuff like human connection, like what we're having right now, it's extremely hard to replicate. And if you have that, it's magical and it's valued by humanity. And the pendulum now, I think, is moving into you have to have the personal relationship in order to get things of value done.
No, I totally agree. And I think, I mean, it goes for everything, everything from like a restaurant. Like, taking a restaurant, for example. If you're going to do the hyper great Noma, for example, like you can create a great business around that because it's one restaurant, whatever number of tables, that's it. It's great. And you can do McDonald's. And like, like everything else in between is like, whatever. And I think it's going to even be more to that as well. And so that's where that large value. And if you can do that sort of so I was gonna say the at scale. And that's why I think salespeople, like generally sales, and I go into marketing sales, everything talking to the customer, it will be much more valuable going to the future. And even with the negativity around AI, which is a lot, and I'm also worried about a couple of things, I feel that part won't go away because I feel it very, very hard when someone actually works in any type of community and or sales. I put them in sort of in the same bucket. It is a relationship with that human being on the other side more than anything else. Like if the product obviously has to work, but it's more than anything else. And so that is the ones that succeed in the future. If you can sort of replicate that, then you're
So
good.
have a good relationship and keep it human and personal. I love that as a message to this end of this session. Thank you so much for joining. And joining, we'll take quotes from this into our book, and we'll post this. And I think this will be extremely useful for our audience. So thank you so much.
Thank you.